Welcome to LDraw. I've been the LDraw webmaster for probably, 17 years now, I think. Something like that. I took over from Tim Courtney, for those of you who knew Tim, when he graduated from college and decided to do better things with his life. I was previously in the Navy, and now I'm based out of just west of Seattle, across the Sound. So this is me at BrickCon 2 years ago. So that's a little bit about me. All right, so what's this session going to be about? Basically, it's kind of more geared towards the intro users. I'm going to try and keep the presentation short and do a little bit more Q&A than I normally do, or maybe show you how to navigate around on the website, since I'm able to do that in this kind of virtual environment, unlike in the classroom. So basically, what we're doing with LDraw, how to use LDraw to make models, what are the technical limitations of the LDraw system, and once you've learned and installed LDraw in your computer, how do you use it to do things, and then a little bit of discussion in the larger LDraw community. All right, so why LDraw? Well, you have this great mock that you just made, and it uses 90% of all the pieces that you own, but you want to document it for posterity's sake or to share with people in the future. You can build it virtually on your computer, and now you have it for all time, or at least until your hard drive decides to fail catastrophically on you. That's what the cloud's for. Another thing, and it's something that really has kind of taken off recently in the last few years that I've noticed, is people creating and selling instructions online. Primarily, my experience has been through Rebrickable, but there are other places that you can buy instructions, and people are using LDraw-based programs, of which Studio is one, to create building instructions to either share or sell online. Other people have been using LDraw to generate really cool 3D renderings, scenes, or just general models. You may have seen some of the artwork I display when I go to cons. And then the most important thing is you don't spend your entire paycheck at the Lego store. Virtual bricks are free. They come in any color that's ever been, well, really any color you can imagine, but the colors that we define, you can pretty much have any brick in any color that Lego's ever produced, which is great, until you've built this great mock in LDCAD and then realize that all of the 1x2 plates that you used have never come in that color. All right, so what's LDraw? Really, LDraw at its core is just a library. That's what we at LDraw.org distribute. We distribute a library of parts that describes Lego pieces in a format that programs can use. And then other people not officially affiliated with LDraw.org, make renders, modelers, viewers, file format converters, and whatnot to be able to build models on your computer. So that's basically like what Studio uses LDraw in their backend. LDCAD is the other really large fan-made program. And then for building instructions, you have LPub, which is also uses LDraw to generate building instructions. All right, at last count, and that number is actually a year old, 11,800 parts. I think we're over 13,000 now. I did a quick math. It's probably about 20% of the total number of non-pattern parts that Lego has produced. Typically, the ones that are missing are the ones that are really weird and organic, like bionicle parts or faces and stuff. And then, of course, there are so many patterns added to the Lego count every year that, like, even if we paid people to keep up, we would never keep up with the sheer amount of pattern parts that Lego is putting out every year, especially in minifig torsos and faces. It is an open source project. It's all readable by a text reader. All of our file formats are posted on the website for anyone to read and develop a program around. So we really have grown out of an online community and maintained it since then. We are probably the oldest and most mature of the Lego CAD systems. So there are a few other competing systems out there. Mecha comes to mind, but we've been around for the longest, and pretty much anybody who has created something since then at least has some sort of converter to get ElDraw models into their system. What does LDraw.org do? We define how to describe models or parts and models in a computer readable format, text reader really, and we distribute the library. And then other people who may or may not be officially connected to LDraw.org don't do everything else. Editors, viewers, converters, renders, everything. All the tools are all usually passion projects by one or maybe two developers. And then we promote them on the site if we think they're of quality. So if you were to open up an LDrop file in a text reader, this is what you would see. Just a bunch of lines describing positions and what parts are used. Which one? This is 8070. I don't remember what set that is, but I took the screenshot off of LDCAD. It is hierarchical, so if you look at a brick, every stud has its own file. So each 2x4 brick has a file, and then inside of that, we define a stud, and then inside of that, we define what a disk is, so that we can reuse geometry and keep our library from being super duper huge. All right, so how do you get started? Well, everything is online at LDraw.org. If the menu, this picture is old because I just redesigned the menu, and I actually just redesigned the site. But if you click on Getting Started and then you choose your OS, we have modern compatible editors for both Linux and Windows. And then Bricksmith lags a little bit behind, but is still quite usable and is still very standards compliant, and that's what is available for Mac. Now, I have heard some issues with Bricksmith and the current iterations of Mac OS, so I'm not sure what's going on there. Alan Smith decided to retire from the project, and the people that raised their hand to pick it back up again haven't made any type of release yet.
Real quick, Dan. I got one guy who's asking, what is the relationship between Stud.io and ElDraw?
There is no formal relationship. They use our library, and that's where it ends. So did that answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So basically, yeah. So that's the consequence of us putting our library out for free online under a really permissive license. Is pretty much anyone can pick it up and build a program around it, even a commercial company that was Bricklink and is now owned by Lego. All we ask is attribution and a link back. So as long as whatever program is using the library has something in there about saying, hey, the library is supplied by LDraw.org and here's where you can go to find out more, that's really all that we ask. And the same goes for like most of No Starch's books use some version of LPub to create instructions. And, you know, again, if you were to create a book of building instructions, all we would ask for you to do is provide some sort of note that everything came from ElDraw. All right, so you need help. The installer didn't install stuff correctly. We do have an all-in-one installer for Windows. No such luck for the other two OSs, unfortunately. But if you need help, you don't understand what's going on, we have a forum site, forum at LDraw.org. It's linked to from the main page. I try to make sure that everything gets answered. If you have a question, usually your question will get answered within a day or two, if not sooner than that, if you ask it on the forums. All right, so you have a mock, it uses a weird piece, and you can't find it in the library. Well, there's two sources. You can go to the parts tracker. That contains all the current unofficial parts that we're working on. And if you can't find it there, you can ask in the forums. As long as it's not super crazy, a lot of our longtime, very prolific part authors usually will have something usable up on the parts tracker within a couple days. So if you find a part that either has just been released and we haven't made yet, or you know, for whatever reason isn't in the library and it's not a Bionicle part, you can probably ask somebody to make it for you. Needless to say, the more, you know, crazy lined organic the part is, the more complicated it is, the larger it is, the harder it is for people to author these parts. Again, you'll see stuff like minifig hair pieces and Bionicle parts and stuff like that with all sorts of very intricate curves and whatnot. You'll find those tend to be missing from the library more than, say, you know, the basic bricks. All right, so what can't you do with LDraw? Well, not much. We don't officially define any type of part snapping standard. However, the two largest distribution editors do. Studio does and LDCAD does both. And we also don't do collision detection, and that's actually probably a good thing because turns out virtual bricks don't bend the way plastic does. So there are certain connections that would actually collide in a virtual setting that don't necessarily you can do in real life, like slotting tiles in between the studs and stuff like that. There's actually a small amount of collision in there. So not having collision detection allows us to do those type of connections. And actually Studio will tell you if you have bricks that are collided in weird ways, to warn you that, hey, maybe you won't be able to build this model in real life. The other big omission and the thing that LDCAD does is flexible object support. So like Technic flex axles, hoses, and stuff like that, you can do in LDCAD. And then in the other two programs that are fairly commonly used, MLCAD and BrickSmith, it uses an external program to create flexible elements. So we do have support, but it's just not any type of officially distributed model by LDraw.org. It's all solved by other people. Yeah, question.
Mike is asking about how long, weeks, months, years, does it take between a new piece debuting on the shelves, in other words, Lego making it, and the piece showing up in the ElDraw library?
Well, it really depends on a number of factors. A, how complicated it is. If it's easy to do, a lot of times it'll show up on the parts tracker pretty quickly, especially if it's a very popular set. The other thing is if there's LDD mesh data available for it. LDD used to share their mesh data with us. They've kind of slacked off on that since the BrickLink acquisition. But typically, if we have mesh data, we can clean up that mesh and get it into the library. And then the life cycle of the part on the parts tracker is usually probably half a year. We try to do at least 2 to 3 releases a year. And so by the time it hits the shelves and by the time it makes it in the library, it's probably somewhere in the realm of half a year or so, if it's an easily moddable part. And it also depends on when it was submitted to the tracker in that release cycle. So if it got submitted to the tracker right before the library admin decided to do a release and got certified, then it could, you could be as short as a couple of weeks. It just depends on luck of the draw in that regard. As far as photorealistic renderings, honestly, Studio pretty much does it better than anyone else. Mechabricks and Studio use the same type of rendering engine. In fact, Studio borrowed the rendering settings from Mechabricks. So if you import your model into Mechabricks and render it, or you render it in Studio, it's going to look pretty similar because the settings are pretty identical. As far as the other renderers go, Padre, the old standby of ray tracing on the internet, we have a number of exporters. LDCAD exports into Padre format, so does LDView, which is just a viewer. And so if you want to create a rendering, you can go that route. All right, so what can you do with your MOCs? You can build building instructions, right? Studio is a great place to start. If you want something more complicated or complex, I think you have, I haven't played with the building instructions in Studio in a while, but you can definitely customize a little bit more, I think, with LPub. And there is a new release I just found out a couple days ago. So the developer of LPub 3D has released a new version of the program as of a couple days ago.
Colin's asking, for creation of new parts, do you consider high resolution 3D scanning for real parts?
There is a gentleman that has created his own Lego built 3D scanner that does do 3D scanning. I don't think anybody of the regular ElDraw crowd has anything close to that technology, but if somebody who has a 3D scanner and wants to contribute to the project is willing to help out, I'm not going to tell them no. All right, so moving on. So here's LPub 3D. LPub 3D is a fork of LPub by Kevin Clegg. It has a more WYSIWYG engine and is a lot more customizable in terms of pagination, layout, and what's going on with your models and how to create, or how you create instructions. So if you find yourself stymied in Studio and you want to do something weird with your instructions, give LPub 3D a shot. You might be able to do whatever you need to do better there. So as mentioned, Studio is backed by ElDraw. Some of the parts they have are not official. They've created on their own, which is fine. But the render you see came straight off of Studio's rendering engine, and honestly, in terms of speed and quality, it's almost unmatched in terms of what I've been using for the last almost 20 years of working with ElDraw. The quirk with Studio is if you need to use unofficial parts, it's a little bit more tricky to get Studio to play nice with unofficial ElDraw parts. That can be done. There are tutorials on the forums, but Studio all around is a good program to use for people just getting started with ElDraw. And then if you decide you want something more advanced, you can move into a more advanced editor like LDCAD. And then this rendering was done with Padre probably about 15 years ago. So as you can see, the difference between this picture and this picture are pretty much the same, but this picture probably took half a day or more to render, and this picture took a couple minutes on my computer. So the speed is the speed and high quality renders is definitely significantly better with modern hardware. And the fact that the cycles renderer that Studios uses can leverage your GPU, and it's not just crunching straight with your central processor. And then there's also been some people that have converted ElDraw format and just used it straight up in Blender or other professional quality animation suites. I know that the maintainer of LDCAD is looking at exporting to Blender format in the next version that he releases. So there will be that. Real quick, there's just I have some gallery of artwork that people have done. All right, so we're always looking for more people to help out with the ElDraw project. If you want to learn how to author parts, please come over to ElDraw. Start simple and work your way up. We've had a couple new authors in the last few months, actually, probably because they're stuck at home with the pandemic and decided to give part authoring a try and liked it and have started contributing. But we're always welcome more authors to contribute to the library. If that's not your cup of tea, but you know how to write really good 3D software, the next generation of ElDraw editors would be awesome. Or you can write an article or a tutorial, present it to one of the core website team, and we may just add it to the website or link to it to help out. I've been toying with the notion of doing tutorial videos. I just need to get a better microphone in order to do that. And so that's kind of on my queue of things that I want to do. And then once you get involved in LDraw.org, then you pretty much, if you're a regular participant, we'll include you in all the discussions on where we're going with the file specification and whatnot. One thing I do ask is I am not a website designer. I do my best, I fumble around, but if you find the LDraw.org website hard to use, or it makes your eyes bleed, or you don't like it in some way, if you can come up with something better, I can probably implement it. Or it doesn't have to. You don't have to be a web designer. If you just show me a mock-up of what you want, I could probably figure out how to make it that way. Also, if you're really passionate about LDraw and want to give a presentation, I'm pretty much the only one doing it right now, and I would be more than welcome to for other people to give LDraw presentations at other conventions. The virtual thing is nice, but once we get back to physical conventions, I don't go to the East Coast conventions anymore. So if someone wants to do LDraw outreach there, that would be great. All right, any questions before I kind of give a tour of the website ecosystem or anything else?
For part develop or for part creation, do you use exclusively the LDraw program to CAD the program or CAD the part out, or would you import that in from like SolidWorks or Adobe?
It depends. Again, it depends on the complication, how complicated the part is. The first part I authored, I actually made in this old program called Rhino, and then exported it into MLCAD and cleaned it up from there. Some people are sculpting the parts in more sculptor-friendly programs, and then importing it into ElDraw and cleaning it up from there. But we do also have a program that is kind of exclusively for creating ElDraw parts that has been in development for the last couple of years. Just real quick, we'll look at the ElDraw website, and I can give you a tour of that. All right, so this here is the new ElDraw website that I just retooled. As you can see, there's a big getting started link right in the center here, and if you click on that, it takes you to the page that allows you to choose your instructions. For Windows, we have an all-in-one installer, so you can just download that. It should automatically install everything you need to do to get started creating stuff on creating models on your computer. As you can see with Linux, there's a little bit more involved, but I have been assured that it works, even though I don't have a Linux machine to test it on. Anytime we do a parts update, we announce it. Our last one was on the 6th of last month. If you're curious about what the latest parts update is, I always have it posted right here in the front. And you just click through there, and then you download the library and copy it over the one that you had previously, and everything should be auto-loaded by all the rest of the programs. Now, Studio does its own thing with the library, so that won't work with Studio. But if you're using some of the other ElDraw programs, once you copy over the library, all the new pieces should show up in the parts bin. If you need to go to the forums, all right, forums are here. Here's what they look like. Just sign up for an account and ask your question or make your contribution. Again, we're always looking for new contributors and people to help out. For unofficial parts, stuff that's still in development, you can go to the parts tracker and then do a search and see if whatever you want is there. I've also, the main site search will also do a search for you, so you can just type in like 3001, and it should direct you to the right parts. So it'll tell you what the part is and what its title is, and then you can select on it and whether or not it's official or unofficial. One note on using stuff off the parts tracker is it can change. If we decide we want a part in a different orientation and you're using it off the parts tracker, we'll change it. and then you'll open your model 3 years later and it'll be rotated weird because we changed what the origin of the part was or its rotation. So just be aware that if you're using unofficial parts, that can happen. And as far as parts in the official library, once we've submitted something in its orientation and origin, we don't change it. So that should never happen with the official library unless we try not to break anything as far as old models. So you could theoretically create a model now 20 years from later, open it up in some LDrop program, and it would look the same because our library, we try to maintain backwards compatibility in our library. As far as what does some of the non-studio programs look like? Oh yeah, one more thing on ElDraw. We have a project called the Official Model Repository. Where did I put that? Basically, official sets in Lego we do in ElDraw. There's probably about 1,500 models in here right now, I think. What do we got? Oh, almost exactly 1,500 models. Typically, you'll see popular themes, Star Wars, UCS, architecture themes, but there's a lot of train stuff in there. We've had a gentleman doing Friends models and stuff like that and doing all the patterns and whatnot. Okay, so as far as LDCAD is concerned, this is what LDCAD looks like. If you were to open it up, you can open up a model like this one, this little X-wing here. It's pretty easy to add parts. You just find the part in the parts bin. He has everything categorized by like Technic. So if I wanted to add a small gear somewhere, I could just drag it onto the screen and then change it to green or whatever. Now it's trans green. I can rotate it if I want. I can get rid of it. And then, for example, if you were going to do a brick, like say you wanted to add another one by one here, it will part snap to whatever it is you're trying to add to. Just like Studio, you can do grouping. So you can select a bunch of bricks like this one, this one, this one, and this one, and then this thing is a little screen share thing got in my way, and then click a new group, and now you can move it around as a group, and it'll always select as a group, and it'll snap onto the little arm will snap onto the rod for you and everything else. So I think that's pretty much all I have as far as presentation is concerned. So I'd just like to open the floor for any questions or any comments, concerns, or anything else.
No questions as of yet, it looks like, but the floor is open for anybody to ask questions.
Just in case everyone's still seeing my screen here, this is the part editor program that most of the parts authors are using now to make parts. So you can, it has a pretty high learning curve, but once you get used to how it's all laid out, it actually makes editing parts pretty nice. Oh yeah, one thing I forgot to mention is I recently implemented a model viewer on the official site. So you can, if you go to Parts and Tools and Lego ElDraw Model Viewer, you can upload a model that you've created, like say 5521, and it should show up here in your browser. If you're curious, if you download a model but you haven't downloaded the ElDraw package and you just want to see what it's all about, I have an in-browser model viewer available now for everyone to use.
So we do have some questions coming in now.
Okay. All right.
Doug Bell is asking, he's been working on a large mock that would really benefit from some types of physics engine. Does anyone do that?
So
like moving
none
parts.
of the none of the programs that I'm aware of do any type of physics. LDCAD has a scripting engine, so you can animate stuff. It's a pretty high learning curve, but it is possible. That's something that you would have to get onto the forum. If you don't understand how to do that, you'd have to get on the forums and ask Roland himself about. As far as like accurately bending flexible parts and stuff like that, there really isn't anything out there for that.
Got it. Another question from Paul Hetherington. Can you make instructions in the program, or do you have to export it to another program that has that ability?
So with, shoot, I thought I had LPub. Oh, I do. With LPub 3D, you should be able to edit the model and edit the instructions in the program itself. I haven't had a whole lot of, but as you can see, the code for the model itself is over here to the right, and you can actually, if you understand how to edit that, you can do that on the fly, or you can just build your model in, say, LDCAD, and then once you have your model fully formed, you can bring it over into LPub and make the instructions around it. As long as you put steps, you can do some rudimentary stuff in LDCAD. So, for example, let me open up a program I did for, like, here's the new White House set, and inside that, I have everything marked out by step, so you can do a little bit of rudimentary instructions just in the program itself by adding steps. And then once you have all your steps fully formed, then you can take it into LPub 3D and do call outs and lay out the model itself. If you're building on the bottom, you can tell it to rotate, and then it'll show you the bricks that you're adding on the bottom and stuff like that. I see the question on the BrickLink takeover by Lego and supply of part models. Yes, to answer your question, yes, we are concerned about it. But again, our license is very permissive. We'll as long as Studio or whatever replaces Studio, if there's some sort of Studio replacement in the works, whatever replaces that, as long as they abide by our license, that's fine with us. One area of concern is that for us is that Lego has been very somewhat reluctant to share with us, but they have shared in the past part data, and now that they kind of own their own LDraw based renderer or program, whether or not they'll be willing to share with us. We're still way too early in that process to tell what's going to happen with that.
Liam's got a question. New to building mocks, which is the best program to design on and get parts list? I'm assuming he means relative to all the different CAD programs that are Lego CAD programs that are out there. So
I would say that the best one, if you're just getting started, Studio is probably has the least amount of learning curve. And then the other nice thing about Studio is that all the parts you use, you can, since it's affiliated with BrickLink, you can figure out, hey, if I built this mock, you know, how much would it be for me to build it, or to buy all the loose pieces to build it in real life, for example. So in terms of that, I would say Studio is probably the best choice. If you're looking to do more advanced stuff, LDCAD is the way to go. And in that case, there are programs out there that will take your LDrop file and turn it into a parts count for you. Rebrickable has an import feature where you can import an LDraw model and it'll put it all in loose parts in your collection, and then you can look up like how much it would cost to get those loose parts, or how many of those pieces that in the mock that you just built in LDCAD, how many of those pieces are in the collection you've already told Rebrickable that you have. As far I see Doug's question about
I think it's just
stuff
more specific about the physics
yeah.
engine.
Yeah, so there used to be a program called SR3 Builder that took all those connections into account, and you could say turn on a hand crank and all the gears and axles and all of that associated would rotate, and it would, you know, open the door or turn the wheel or whatever it is that it did. However, the gentleman that developed that program passed away suddenly, and since he never made his program open source, his estate decided to honor that choice. So unfortunately, that project is no longer being developed, and it cannot be. And since it's so old that it may not necessarily, I haven't tried, but it might not work on modern hardware. And then in terms of how to, his question about using an Excel spreadsheet to rotate stuff, I still use a little bit of an Excel spreadsheet actually myself to rotate parts. LDCAD has some pretty nice advanced features in terms of that to tell you like the distance between 2 points. So if you select like this part, and then you can get info about the amount of distance between those parts, so that you don't have to manually calculate that. You can just plug that into your spreadsheet to figure out what the angle will be. Or if you want to know what the angle between, you know, this part, and this part is, it'll tell you what those angles are, so that you can rotate this part to face that part, for example. And that's very useful for Technic models, as I'm sure Doug knows.
Thanks a lot, Orion. I know I've used LDraw in the past, go back and forth between making instructions and whatnot, and it was a little cumbersome in the past, but it looks like it's just growing in functionality, and the fact that you have Snap 2 makes building a lot easier as well. I guess the next step would be to get rid of the 2D input and somehow use three-dimensional input like hands or gloves or cameras or something.
And I have seen a few people have come onto the forums recently saying they're working on virtual reality stuff using the LDraw library, which is actually pretty cool.
Awesome.
I'll see you on the forums if you guys have any questions or any other concerns.